Hello, hello to my True Blue crew. It is so good to be with you on our weekly sew and chat. Time to make some progress on all of those random projects we start, and just I at least need the accountability of sitting down every week at a set time to get things done, because I still have a full-time job that is not quilting, unfortunately. So I'm trying to run all of this quilty stuff in the other spare moments of the day. And sometimes there just aren't enough hours. And so I'm really gung-ho about things. I start a lot of projects and then they sit, but I'm trying to make dedicated progress. So my initial two thoughts when I was thinking about sitting down to sew were binding, because I have a finished quilt and I'm ready to just, do the machine binding and get that project all done. And I think I'm going to hang on to it as a class sample. It's my jelly diamonds that I did a few months ago for Fat Quarter Shop's Jolly Bar Day, special celebration for their pre-cut. And it turned out really cute, and it inspired me to actually create a pattern around that size of pre-cuts. And working with the half rectangle triangles and turning them into diamonds was a lot of fun. So, like I said, I think I'm going to keep that as a class sample. But it's kind of hot and boring to be wrestling with a quilt and doing binding when I'm trying to talk to you guys. So I think I'm going to save that for one of my other group sewing events, and I can get that done pretty quick at another time. And so the second option that I had sitting here, I'm staring at it just beyond the computer screen, are all of the half rectangle triangles for my temperature quilt. But again, I was just feeling kind of hot and antsy, and I don't really know what I want to work on tonight. Temperature quilt wasn't it. I don't really feel like pressing all of those blocks and trimming. So I came to my love, my blue fabrics. I am working on another hefty quilt kit. You can kind of see the picture there. This is called Zephyr. And I inherited this from another quilter, and she was never going to get everything finished with the kits that she had bought. So I have basically been working on this throughout the year at my monthly sew nights. We do a Friday night sewing group once a month. And so I've got all of my pieces cut and labeled with which fabric colors. There's so many fun prints in this one. And then I pack it up and get it out the next month. But I've been putting so many fun blocks together that I want to continue. It's going to be a little bit of a mess as I dig through and lay things out, because like I said, there's tons and tons of pieces and parts to all of this, and I have to find out where I left off. That's the other key. I mean, at my sewing day, I took over like 3 tables worth, because I just had all my piles of fabric laid out so that I could see them and easily grab the pieces. So I want to know what you are working on as I get organized here. I'm going to be bending over here in my little sewing corner. But let's take a look at what I've already got done. Whoops, I labeled that one and had it pinned while it was folded. So this is these are the outer ring of stars. You can see a kind of a light blue star, and it's got a pretty hourglass in the middle of it. So there's a bunch of those. And then there was another block that more kind of loops around. You can't see some of these fabrics. These are two different blues right there. Here, I'll hold it up to this main camera too, so you can see there are two different blues there. This corner is a little bit darker than this stripe, but it's kind of got that two-tone center. So those are fun blocks. And then I've got some other components. These were fun to make because you kept just adding, they were like flip and sew corners. You just kept adding a square and, you know, chopping it off. Obviously, you started kind of with a half square triangle, and then we added another square and chopped it off and added another little square as we built out to make these stripes. And then in some different colors there. And some of these muted blues aren't showing up very well on the computer screen, but they're lovely in person. And then I've got these nice triangles and some other little corner pieces that are going to be fun to put together. I've got these kind of all in different arrangements. And then there's that nice big center star that's going to be the basis of this. But I am so in love with all of these blues. So those are the blocks that I already have together and the components. And then I've got my these other units. There's some more of the hourglass squares that I had made a light blue star with, but then there's an alternate version of that star. So let me see, this is what I mean about I really need space to spread out, and I don't have it. If you know, I've got a little bit of a desk here, but it's piled up with other stuff. So excuse me as I go up and down. To try and find stuff that I put, you know, you keep everything organized in the box, but then you have to dig through the box to find the pieces. Okay, so I need some eyes, and I need the 3.5 inch squares. So what is everybody else working on tonight? It has been a fun 2 days of the Quilted Summit. And I know I'm competing with Tabitha's live stream. She's having a sit and sew for participants of the Quilted Summit. And it was a free ticket. And the recordings are available for 24 hours. So if you need something to do tonight or tomorrow, you can still sign up for the free ticket. It's linked in the description below. Or you could upgrade to the all access pass and take, you know, a couple weeks or months to watch all of those free classes. Okay, so now I need here are our star points. So I'll get those in place. Oops. Then I need other Okay, these guys. You know, you get to a certain point in your project. Hi, Karen. Karen, so and so is here. You get to a certain point in your project and it just kind of takes on that momentum and it's harder to put away because you're seeing things actually come together. And I was like, where did I put the centers? Okay, now, again, we have some different colors. This fabric on two sides is different than the other two sides, and I have to figure out this blue goes with the white point here, and this darker blue goes with these darker flying geese. So, not that it'll probably matter in the long run, but that's how it's going. And we're making 4 of these stars. Okay, ready to sew. I'm all lined up. I've got bobbin thread, so we're all good there. And it's just a basic 9 patch, so we can sew those rows together. Welcome, Candace. It's so good to see you. The one thing I do have to check over here in the shadows is my white fabric. This is a tone on tone. There's no way you're going to see any of the speckled white fabric, but trust me, it is there. So I'm going to need to check each of these white squares and make sure that I have them right side up. And then my sewing machine was deciding it didn't want to stay green to go. For those of you that have multiple sewing machines, are you dedicated to using one machine per project? Because that's what you always hear. To maintain your consistent quarter inch, you need to finish your whole sew the whole quilt on one machine, and that way you don't have to worry about your seam allowance as much. I mean, obviously you need to pay attention to seam allowances, but um, I do not. I sew over at my mom's house, and I have recently on this project. And she has multiple machines. She just sets up one of her extra machines for me to sew on. And so I sew a few blocks on her machine, and then I come home and I sew on my machine. I mean, I'm not an award-winning quilter, but I don't have problems with that. Everything seems to go together just fine. And as you noticed, I jumped over my rows. I'm sewing all of these corners first, and then I'll have to go back and get the middle row. Didn't go in order. So I was talking about sampler quilts in my lecture for the Quilted Summit that I mentioned. Because I like making lots of different kinds of blocks, but I don't want to always just put them together in straight rows. So yeah, Karen said that she had a travel machine and she just, measured her seam allowance to make sure it was consistent. Okay, now I'm thinking I had those turned the other way. It's hard to, okay, I can go by this blue. Uh, it was hard. I didn't have the fabric colors in real life match to the fabric color in the pattern. So I have to go by the blue versus the gray in that center hourglass. And that will help keep me lined up because I had it turn 90 degrees. Again, not that anybody would really notice or care. And I am going to, actually, I can do it this side, put the flying geese on top. And I talked about this when I was putting my cotton cuts blocks together, because when you make flying geese, you have an intersection of seams on the back side right in there. And I am going to aim for that intersection as I sew. And that way I won't cut off my points. I don't really need pins at this stage because I'm not matching any seams. I'm just, matching the overall length of the pieces, and everything was cut to size already. So that's not an issue. And we've got a big quilting celebration coming up this weekend. Saturday is Sew a Jelly Roll Day. I've got several patterns that work well with jelly rolls. There's a couple in my monochromatic book. And if you don't want to buy the whole book, you can get the standalone pattern. Yellow Suns is very popular. And I've also got a downloadable pattern guide with 2 blocks in it, actually. Potato chip blocks and I can't remember if I did the jelly star or the jelly chain. I think I did a jelly chain on that one. But just, go in the shop at truebluequilts.com and you can find those jelly roll ideas. And if I could get on the ball, I could write a blog post or 2 and give you all the resources in one place. I always, I come up with these grand schemes at the very last minute and then don't have time to execute anything. Not a great strategy for a business owner, but we're trying. I talked about, and speaking of business, I talked about holiday sales and trying to get organized well ahead of time so you're not making that last minute rush, because we're in the middle of September, so everybody's counting down the days to Halloween, then Thanksgiving, then Christmas. Hanukkah, whatever your winter celebrations look like. And here, let me do these in order. I need 4 of my corners. With the temperature quilt, it was too uh, too much thinking. I had to do a lot of thinking in my day job recently. Such a drag. And I didn't want to have to try to think on camera. So this is a little bit easier to just follow the directions of the pattern versus double check, what the temperature, what color am I using, all that kind of stuff. And I really didn't want to wrestle the binding. So like I said, between sewing rows together and binding or cutting for a new project, where do you find those hangups in the quilting process? Is there one part of the journey that things bog down and you find it easier to start something new than to press through those? Obviously, my quilts, like a lot of people, get stuck at the quilting stage, which sounds funny because I do have a long arm, but we still have, even if you own the long arm machine, you still have the time and figuring out batting and backing and everything. So I've got quite a backlog of projects that need to be quilted. And then of course, once they're quilted, then they sit and don't get binding on them. So, and I need to have a binding party. Ugh, I did that wrong. Ugh. All 4 of those. No. Just the first one. This one. This one on the workspace is right. That one's right. That one's right. I just had one block that was turned around the wrong direction. So we get to introduce Jack. Jack wanted some screen time. Karen says she'd never want to think on camera. It kind of goes back to being a math teacher when you had to do math in public every day, add, subtract, multiply, divide. My afternoon classes always thought I was so smart because I would remember the answers from when I taught the class to my morning students, and I could, do these calculations. My memory is probably a little bit better than my actual computation skill. So if I worked it out, and of course I had notes off to the side that showed everything all worked out. Didn't snip that quite enough. Oops. Okay, so this darker blue triangle gets lined up with the gray triangle. So we'll make sure we put it on that side. Okay. Glad I caught that. The other reason I get hung up and don't finish some of my projects is because I keep thinking I'm going to record a video about it. So Candace says she gets slowed down when she has to trim up a lot of blocks. Yes, that does take some time. So I'm kind of strategic when I have some of those tasks that I don't like as much. Those are the ones I plan to do when I'm with a sewing group, because I know I can talk to people, and it's slightly different talking to people in person if I'm in a sewing group versus being here on camera. Because here on camera, I have the burden of keeping the conversation going. When I'm in person, you can be trimming or cutting all your fabric, whatever stage you're at, and just be listening in to what other people are saying and doing. So it's not quite as critical. I'm going to need my iron, so I will have to get up and get that going. I had a thought of setting up a pressing station, and that may have to go here. I'll have to look at where the plugs are along this wall and see if I can run the iron around and set that up right over here. And I was making good progress earlier this year going through some of my scrap bags of fabric. Because my daughter gave me her big bookcase. She didn't want it in her bedroom anymore because she brought home some of her other furniture from college. And when she moved back home to go to community college here, saved some money for a few years instead of paying for dorms and stuff at the university. No, that's downstairs. And I kept saying it was hot earlier, so I don't want to turn the iron on. That's one of my other slowdowns. Oh, hi, Andrea. How are you doing at Mama J's Enterprises? She follows way too many channels that have community projects. Yes, those sew-alongs do get very tempting, don't you? And then you're on to another one and another one and another one. I know. Such a fun struggle. Okay, I am going to walk off camera for just a moment and get my iron all set up and turned on. Carefully come back around, and I realized off camera that direction I warped the very corner of my cutting mat with this beautiful little Aliso iron, even though it has the silicone pad, silicone. This was sitting directly on a mat, and it got too hot and warped that. Luckily, I didn't use that corner of the mat, so it's not a terrible problem. But Barry over at Barry Quilts, he put a wooden cutting board underneath a wool mat, and that just gave it an extra layer of protection. So when I set up another ironing station, I think that's what I'm going to try and do. Okay, I think should be hot in here. It's so much fun watching someone else iron, right? Press their blocks. Part of the necessary part of quilting. How many of you starch, and when do you starch? Because most of the time I just I'm not opposed to steam, so occasionally I haven't filled my little Aliso up. I'm just using a dry iron on this stuff tonight. Most of the time I will, if I'm using starch, I will use that before I cut. So I will, starch the whole back quarter or yardage or whatever I am using. And then these are going to have to come. But I was pressing some blocks, and my mom asked if I wanted the best press, and she was spraying her blocks with starch as she pressed the you know, at the what I call the intermediate stage, which I thought it just had never occurred to me to start your block as you go. I thought that was only a prior step, prior to sewing step. Hi, Lori. Lori's a starch before cutting person. I'm so fascinated by finding out how people do all this stuff. With some of these bulky seams, I want to make sure they get, you know, because I'm coming down against the way that the half square triangle wanted to lay down. Those edges don't want to lay down very well, but it's just fabric. You get to go where I tell you to go. I put a longer extension cord on my iron, but it doesn't seem to be helping me out much at the moment. Must have gotten caught underneath the table somewhere. Okay. Those are all pressed. Now I can get my this part I will pin because I want to match up those seams when I join my rows together. I don't have a whole lot of pins available. And Andrea is saying that she uses a pressing pen on the seams. That prevents shrinking. Andrea, are you talking about one of those starch pens? Like, are they Acorn? Is that the brand name of that? And Candace says she rarely starches unless it's small pieces, something like an Art East company pattern. Those are quite an endeavor. Which one are you working on, Candace? I was so tempted by the Winnie the Pooh, but I had too many other things going on and I just didn't pull the trigger on that one. I unfortunately I try to be responsible and I talk myself out of kits a lot of times. My next big one that I'm debating is a legit kits. I really want to do that, but I've got other kits. The same lady that gave me this blue one, I've got a Judy Niemeyer kit from her that I'll probably pull that out next before I do a legit kits quilt. And we are, the shops in my local area are having a shop hop in October. And it falls right on my birthday. Yay me. So I think I'm going to be shopping for fabric to make the Starry Night pattern from So Kind of Wonderful, the one with curves. So, okay, Andrea from Mama J Enterprises is saying when we were talking about starch that she has an acorn pen that she refills with her own recipe for starch. That is a great idea. And we were mentioning Art East Quilting Co. patterns, and Candace is working on the 100 Acre Woods. Yes, the Winnie the Pooh pattern. That's going to be so pretty. And then did you go with the reddish background or the blue background on Peter Pan? Because I like them both. That would be such a hard choice. And Lori, I am jealous. She's got the blue Cafe Aliso iron, and I just got too impatient. I had been wanting one for a while, and I bought the pink one, the Tula pink, and then literally like 3 weeks later, they announced the Cafe in my favorite blues. So, um, Candace is going to start with a Violet Craft. Which Violet Craft pattern? Because I I buy all these patterns and then I never, like I said, with this long list of projects, I've got the Giraffe by Violet Craft. She has an elephant. I've seen a lion done in by Violet Craft. Those are two really really pretty ones. And yeah, so both Violet Craft and Legit Kit would be fun. Candace, that's so funny. You're going with the colorful, the Dawn that has some of that's the one I'm calling red, the reddish pink purples in the background. And I'm such a blue person, but I really like the Dawn color scheme on that one. It'll be gorgeous. And Candace says then she's going to do the Cow by Violet Craft. That'll be wonderful. Lots and lots of fun. So, yeah, I need to, with the end of the year coming up, timing, it's only September, and here I am saying, oh, the end of the year, I need to plan for 2026. But realistically, you don't start well, of course I do. I'm probably going to start 3 more projects before the end of the year. But my grand plans, I have the Starry Night that I mentioned, the Judy Niemeyer kit that I have. Those will probably be 2 of my main projects for next year. And I know I should probably be using a stiletto here instead of my fingers to keep these seams going under the presser foot, but Oh, I had to read through your whole comment. Andrea from Mama J says we can, when I was talking about using a stiletto instead of my fingers, I didn't realize that you can't see anything. You've got my nice little pin cushion that I'm uh, putting my pins in as I finish. And yeah, quite boring. Um, it was like this. I was on a Zoom meeting and my boss had to tell me, Andy, you're not sharing the screen. Could you please show us what you're talking about? Oh, sure. Quick zap this last. Oh, and Andrea is doing the Tula Pink colorway for the Under the Sea. Are you enjoying it so far, Andrea, on that? Um, I don't think I've watched anyone because I watch almost all of Sean, the guy who sews, but he's doing the Tula Pink in the flyway, which is the one that's almost finished, and then he's got batiks for Under the Sea. So that'll be fun. Yeah, I've got the bluish teal turquoise colors for my Under the Sea. Okay, now I'll get this last row on, and then we will have all of these stars put together. I also have a craft project that I want to make for my daughter for Christmas. And I'm not going to give too many details. I don't think she follows my live streams, but just in case, uh, Kendra, skip ahead. Um, but I haven't started it yet, and I really need to do that if I'm going to get it finished. Yes, Andrea, I know how that goes when you get the clues, but you haven't put any of them together because you're waiting for that perfect moment to do the filming with it as well. Let me turn that a little bit so you can at least see that, yes, I am sewing. One more. And I'm not going to press these. I'm going to leave them folded up like that in when I put them away in the box. They will fit better. And whoops. I thought I ironed that the wrong way. It just didn't want to lay the way I told it to. Behave. So I need to go download a nice chick lit, summer beach read love story, because I have been reading a lot of Jack Reacher novels. And those are all save the world, defeat the bad guys, but very detailed hand-to-hand combat kind of fighting and, lots of shooting and stuff, murder mystery type things. And the plot line in the one I just finished last night was rather dark, and I'm like, I need to find something a little more cheerful in between. I like Abby Jimenez, but those aren't available at the library. They're so popular. In terms of a lighthearted romance, Marie Bostwick, I like her novels. Yeah, so if you've got any good suggestions for something that's not a murder mystery, doesn't have to, be a lighthearted romance, but maybe, I don't know, I do like historical fiction, so World War I, World War II stories, spy novels. I like spy stuff too. Hello, Annette. How are you doing? Andrea is saying that she has plans to do the Jelly Roll Day sewing with Katie, the Greenland quilter, and Teresa Louise. Yes, the friendship pattern she's talking about. Oh, Andrea listens to period romances on audiobooks. Yeah, that reminds me, I did download a book from Audible that was it was all about Joan of Arc, but I only read the first couple chapters or listened to the first couple chapters. I'll have to get back into that. Yes, Annette, I'm glad to hear that your post-surgery pain is tolerable. So very, very glad to see you up and around and at least typing, I'm assuming one-handed. Natasha Lester. Ooh, I will definitely have to look those up, Lori. I'm writing it down right now. What paper did I put out? A letter from my friend. Here, I've got my cotton cuts sticky notes that I can write down. Natasha Lester. Kate Quinn is my favorite war novelist, historical fiction. Very, very good. And Jennifer Cheverini wrote a couple World War I, women-centric World War I stories, The Canary Girls and Switchboard Soldiers, and those were both excellent. But so I will have to do that. Okay, so I've got those stars done. Let's see what's up next. I have to find. I know I sewed the strips together. I have to find. I remember very clearly. Oh, here it is. I'm glad to hear that all Annette's plates and rods were removed, so she can start the next stage of the healing process. Okay, so I've got my long strip. I'm going to have to do some cutting on this long strip, obviously. This pattern had such odd cutting. We did a lot of like 2 5/8 or 3 7/8. And that was very odd. Okay, Andrea, have fun. Have a good night. Okay. Now I'm going to carefully put my iron with lots of padding over there, and then got a really long ruler. We are cutting 4 3/4. And of course, my ruler is too big to balance on the edge of the desk, and my blade has a nick in it. This one didn't get straight, so because I'm trying to keep the horizontal line of my ruler on the horizontal seam line. And we can keep those all nice and square. Strip set did not stay nice and square, which is unfortunate. Or maybe I just didn't do a good job pressing. Hopefully I can get my last two pieces out of this. Yep. I could make a nice little four patch with my pretty blue fabric scraps, but not tonight. Okay, so I have those. And then fabric D triangles. I don't remember cutting D triangles. See, and this is where it gets confusing, because I thought I cut everything ahead, but I don't like cutting triangles and then having them sit. I just worry that I'll stretch them all out of place. So now I have to go back to my cutting instructions, and that was D. Yeah, I didn't cut all the squares. So I'm on this step where I need these gray triangles to put on the sides, all four sides of my two-tone strips. And I don't have my fabric cut. So I guess that's where we will leave this adventure tonight. And I will need to cut my triangles before I sew that step. So I will leave my, these little sticky notes are so handy. So I will remember to cut my triangles for next time. So everything's going to go back in the bags. So Annette, this is a kit. I'm just finding the front page that has the picture. It's this beautiful blue queen size quilt. And I've been working on it at my monthly late Friday night sewing time. So I made the center star, and today I was working on some of these that will be in, they're actually the border stars right there, the light ones in between. And I've got some striped components for another section. I've got these are going to be some of the corn. I can't really tell where these go, where these will end up, because the diagram, you know, it's hard to, for some of these sections, it's hard to decipher where exactly the block is. But it's called Zephyr, and it's from Wilmington Fabrics. So yeah, I think Annette, in your current situation, you may have to just pet the fabric and not plan on sewing. But it would be amazing if you're feeling up to one-handed jelly roll magic. So yeah, this has been a fun project. The last few years, I've really gotten into sewing with kits. I spent so many years just collecting my own fabric. And then I inherited some from a quilter in my circle of friends who passed away much too young, obviously. And so I want to get these things into finished quilts so that people can enjoy them. And I haven't decided if this is one that I will keep or if I will give it away. And someone was saying that they would never spend that much time on a charity quilt or something that she was going to give away to someone cheap. And I'm like, I just like sewing, and this fabric is so pretty, and the fabric and the pattern is interesting, so that I'm getting my joy in the process. It doesn't matter to me really where it ends up. So we'll see what we do with that. But it's been a lovely evening seeing everyone. I hope you have a wonderful time and well spent with fabric and friends. So thank you so much for being here. Have a good week. I will be back right here next Wednesday for some more work in progress, and I hope to see you then. Take care.